Hello and welcome to the kitchen. So today we'll be cooking pasta carbonara. It's a simple Italian dish consisting of pasta, bacon, eggs and cheese. And yes, before you start yelling, the original is cooked with guanciale, a cured smoked pork's cheek or jaw, rubbed in pepper. It can be quite hard and expensive to get outside of Italy, so regular bacon will also do you fine. Just make sure you don't get sliced bacon, either like cubes or chunks, or just buy the whole lot like here. For the pasta you can use pretty much what you want. A lot of people use spaghetti. I don't think it's that good because it's thin strands and I think it's nicer if you use like a fettuccine like this, the wider strands. And for the cheese it's Pecorino Romano. It's a sheep's cheese, and if you don't like that you can use Grana Padano. It's a cow's milk cheese. It just needs to be a hard cheese that you can grate. And notice there's no cream, no milk, no flour, nothing. The sauce is made just from egg and cheese and a little bit of water, and including the melted fat from the bacon. So let's get started. So for the bacon here I like to cut some 8 to 10 millimeter slices. And make sure to use a sharp knife to cut easily through the skin. So actually this bacon doesn't have much fat. Ideally you want it to be a bit more fatty. The guanciale will be almost pure fat and with a little bit of meat in between. Yeah. Should have looked better when I bought it. When using whole bacon like this, I like to remove the skin because that's a bit chewy. So see if we can line this up. Usually I cut it in half lengthwise. If you got a wider piece, maybe you can make 2 cuts. And then again about 1 centimeter in width. You want fairly big chunks like this. It will get smaller once we cook it because the fat will render out. So we prepare a frying pan and a pot of water. You want a lot of water for cooking pasta. It might not seem like you need it, but you want a fairly rolling boil, and that lets the pasta roll around so it doesn't stick together. If you have too little water, then the pasta can't move and it will stick both to the bottom of the pot and to itself. So you rather want to put too much water than too little. And you add salt. I recommend you start cooking the bacon a few minutes before you start boiling the pasta, because in case you don't finish the bacon in time, the pasta will be overcooked. The other way around, you can just turn down the pan, wait for the pasta to cook and turn it back up. I usually start it at the same time. That fits for me, but just until you get into the rhythm, cook the meat a little prior to starting the pasta. So I have 100 grams of cheese. I think we should use 30-40 grams, something like that. So we just remove this crust here, or rind. I think it's called when it's a cheese. And then we grate the cheese. So the thin part is crumbling a bit, but it doesn't really matter. I recommend starting the bacon with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And at this point you can also grind in some pepper. For the eggs here we want 1 whole egg and 1 yolk. For the whole egg, let's go with the big one. And you don't have to throw the white away. You can mix it with some spice and fry it on the pan and eat it on a piece of bread later. Oh, I almost screwed this up. It's time to wash hands. And then you want to beat it up. And then you add most of the cheese. Make sure to add all the chunks so they can be dissolved a bit. You want to save a little bit to put on top afterwards. And then you just mix this in. It's also good to do this early so the cheese has some time to dissolve a bit and get softer. Just give it a mix every now and then the cheese will slowly dissolve. Just add however much pasta you want to eat, and once it gets soft you stir around to get it in the pot, and then it should take care of itself. You pretty much want it to be a rolling boil like this, so that the pasta doesn't stick to the pot and itself. So we start to get some color on the bacon, which we want. And then the question is, how long do we cook the pasta for? I can't really give you a time, but if you touch it and you feel something that's still solid, then it's definitely not enough. When it's getting closer, I recommend you pick up a strand and you cut it in half. If you can see that it's still dry or solid inside, then it's not enough. As soon as you see there's no solids left, it's a matter of a minute, then it's perfect. It also depends which kind of dish you're cooking. If you are cooking something with a lot of sauce, then you can stop a bit early to still make the pasta good when it's actually done cooking in the sauce. But for carbonara, I aim for that when the inside just loses the white color, then it's pretty good. So to be honest, this bacon doesn't really have enough fat. You want a layer of fat in the bottom of the pan, actually. So I'm not sure if this shows up on the camera, but you can see that pasta is still dry inside, so it's not quite done yet, and it's also a bit firm. If you take a bite of it, you can also feel that it's still hard inside. So for dishes like this where the bacon is not actually crispy, I like to add in some water just before the pasta is done. That also helps wash off some of the flavor from the bacon, and that can then coat the pasta once it gets into the dish, especially when there's not as much fat like we have here. And you just use the pasta water, obviously. So if you see that color in the water there, that's pure flavor. That's what you want. If you have more fat, then you don't have to do that. The pasta is almost getting to the point where it's ready. And you see most of the water has now evaporated. That doesn't really matter, we can add more. So the bacon is done, my pasta is done cooking. It has lost that white hard inside, and it's al dente, as the Italians would say. I like to scoop up a little bit of water in the pan. And then you turn off the pasta. And then you just bring it over with the water. Like that. We can mix this around. If you listen to this, you will hear that the splattering has stopped because the pasta is only 100 degrees, and for the splattering to happen it has to be more than 100, so you'll cool down the pan. You can wait a little bit to bring the heat back up, but don't get it too much. Then what we'll do next is check how much water we have. I have almost nothing, so I'll add in a little bit more. So now the pasta is just wet. There's a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan, but there's no big puddle. That's what we want. Maybe a little bit more. When you add the water, again you cool down the pan, and you want to hear it just simmering a little bit. Then you turn down the heat before you add in the egg. You give the egg and cheese one last swirl. And with the pan on the lowest heat, you just dump in the lot. And then you start mixing it. The reason we turn down the heat is that now the egg will cool down the pan, and it doesn't scramble. If you heat the egg too much, it will set into like a fried egg basically, or scrambled eggs, which we definitely don't want. We want a nice creamy texture. We keep a little bit of heat on the pan, and over time this will set up, and once you got the consistency that you want, you take it completely off the heat and pour it into the plate immediately. You want to stop a little bit early, actually like this, and then it's perfect. You can always add a little bit extra water if you feel like it's too solid, if the egg is not scrambled, that is. As soon as you make the eggs scramble, it doesn't emulsify the heat, the fat and the water anymore, and you'll just get scrambled eggs in water, which you don't want. But I think this is quite nice. We can just taste it. The bacon and the water from the pasta has salt, and I think this is fine for me, but at this point you can add a little bit of salt if you want. I still want to add in a little bit of pepper. Again, that's to taste what you prefer. Turn off the heat and serve. So I like to crack some pepper on top again, just a little bit, and then you top it off with some Pecorino cheese. And there's your dish.